This is why Arne Slot going to Liverpool and being the next manager after Jurgen Klopp is such a brilliant move for all parties. I'm a massive fan of this deal. We're going to break down who Arne Slot is, what he'll bring to Liverpool, and where the club will go with him at the helm. An overview. This guy is an exciting young manager. He's only 45 years old, and he's brought an almost immediate success to Feyenoord. He's been there a few years now, but he's won them their first league title in nearly 10 years, getting them to Europa Conference League final. For a club like Feyenoord, with all due respect, was unbelievable. I think a lot of people would have realised he's on the radar when he's come up against, of course, the great Jose Mourinho. So he's a young manager. He brings incredible attacking football to the club. Obviously, I'll talk about that later on in the video, how that affects Liverpool. But I like the fact that he's kind of come out and said that he's a Liverpool fan anyway. He's a massive proponent of what he saw in the 80s from obviously, the huge success Liverpool had in that decade and how Liverpool almost made him a fan of football in Dutch football, which I think is huge because every club has got their own identity. Every club's got its own ethos, and Liverpool's got a very, very special religious connection to their manager when it goes right. And that's why someone like Roy Hodgson didn't quite work out, and why someone like, Kenny Dalglish obviously was massive, and someone like Jurgen Klopp as well, because these guys are almost like deities in Liverpool. They have to be as big, they have to be as loud as and bombastic as Liverpool fans obviously are. They almost have to have this musical quality about them and have to kind of carry the weight of expectation from Liverpool fans on their shoulders. It's very similar to how maybe Jose Mourinho didn't quite fit in at Manchester United, how Arsene Wenger kind of carried this kind of pizzazz, this kind of style at Arsenal. I think Liverpool have got this kind of, they want their managers to be exciting, to be Hollywood, but to have this kind of respect, to kind of have this gravity about them. And I think Arne Slot, from what I've seen, holds very, very good press conferences. He's a very, very good communicator. And we have to realise that when Jurgen Klopp came into the Premier League, when he came into Liverpool, he looked a lot younger, that's for sure. This is a guy that never won the Champions League, lost the Champions League final to Bayern Munich in 2013, won a couple of league titles, of course, and did relatively well at Mainz, even though he kind of potentially contributed towards their relegation as well. So this is a guy nowhere near the finished article. When we talk about Jurgen Klopp in such glowing terms, it all kind of changed for him at Liverpool. I mean, I think Dortmund was a bit of a forward. I think it was a bit of an introduction. In reality, the Jurgen Klopp we now think about, if he ever does get linked to the German national job in the future, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, it's because of what happened at Liverpool. So Liverpool becomes this kind of coming-of-age story for a lot of managers, even back in the 70s and 80s, of course. And Liverpool has this kind of journey with managers when it goes right. Obviously, not all of them have gone right. And I think Arne Slot fits into that beautifully. He's a winner, but he's not a winner on the biggest scale. He's got room to grow. And again, at the age of 45, that's very, very young as a manager for what he's achieved. And what I do also like is that he's not this kind of the flash kind of name, the Xabi Alonso, even De Zerbi, because I think that brings so much more expectation. It reminds me a little bit of how Spurs have got Ange Postecoglou, and how I think he's been able to go under the radar a little bit. Press conferences aren't as saturated. People aren't tuning in to Ange Postecoglou in the same way they used to with Conte and what was Mourinho saying week after week. And Ange Postecoglou's been able to instill far more of a philosophy, in my opinion, unpressured from media scrutiny, from fan scrutiny, because he's a lesser name and he can build his name up a little bit. Maybe how Arsene Wenger kind of took the Premier League by storm, because he was a very little known figure in Premier League football when he arrived at Arsenal. Within a couple of years, he was winning doubles and winning Premier League titles. And Arne Slot could be in a very, very similar fashion to that. I think he could take the pressure off, whilst also maintaining the philosophical approach of Jurgen Klopp, but take the pressure off, because we don't really know a lot about him. There aren't going to be millions of people tuning into his press conferences. I mean, Liverpool were kind of linked yesterday to Jose Mourinho. Now, I'm not saying they were genuine links or whatever, but that is absolutely not where Liverpool need to be going. They need to have someone that kind of carries the mantle, carries the philosophy, can bring a lot of weight on his shoulders. We've seen it at Feyenoord, especially with how committed the club were to keeping him. I think he's on a contract till 2026, and he's on huge money, £5 million a year, I think it is, with a release clause that could be close to £9 million to get him out of the club. Feyenoord are a huge institution. They've had some incredible legends come through that club. And for Feyenoord to kind of give so much weight to a manager like that, especially in a league where there isn't that much money, because of the turnover, because of the kind of player sales that Feyenoord have been able to generate under Arne Slot because of the development that he brings to clubs. That is a glowing testament to who he is. And also, we have to be real. Liverpool aren't going to compete with Chelsea in terms of spending £150 million on a midfielder. They're not. Maybe here and there. They're not going to be able to compete with Man City financially. They don't compete with even Arsenal in the last couple of years. They go out and make astute signings. I think Arne Slot can fit into that. I think someone that comes in with a bit more experience, a bit more reputation, he will demand a transfer strategy that matches what he needs to be doing in his career. I think Arne Slot can definitely work with the youth team a lot more. How many players have we seen, the likes of Dans, McConnell, Connor Bradley, that have come through this season, Quansah, and can be helped by Arne Slot, and Arne Slot's remit isn't going out spending 50, £100 million on 28-year-olds, 29-year-olds. He will align 1,000,000% with where Liverpool need to go on a financial model as well. And we have to talk about the style of play. Marcel van der Kraan, his line has come out and been very, very popular in many articles that I've read about Arne Slot, saying crazy, sexy football is the best way to describe Arne Slot. And that kind of sounds very similar to rock and roll. Is it rock and roll football, rock and roll gegenpress football, whatever it was with Jurgen Klopp, that kind of loud, attacking, aggressive, in-your-face kind of football. He's someone that is risk-based from what I've seen. He kind of wants players to gamble. He wants a high line. And that fits perfectly into what Liverpool need. When Jurgen Klopp announced, I did a video on this channel, when he announced, I wanted Pet Linders to come in and replace him. That's who I would have wanted to come in, because he has that element of continuity. A lot of Liverpool fans wanted that as well. Obviously, that isn't going to happen now. But that for me made the most sense. Sometimes a club can come in, a manager can come into a club, and you want a transition. You want complete change. Someone like Unai Emery, completely different to how Steven Gerrard managed, obviously to a different standard as well. Sometimes you want drastic change. You want revolution. I'm sure Chelsea fans would want a revolution from whatever Pochettino is trying to do. But because Liverpool have been so successful in the last 4 or 5 years, I don't think it's revolution. I don't think it's an experienced head for a couple of years until you get Xabi Alonso and you rip up the playbook, you rip up the pressing, you rip up the beautiful football and the kind of the first time diagonals from Trent, the first time diagonals from Robertson. You want someone that both carries the weight of the club on his shoulders, can do that, is young enough to be flexible, to build the youth team, to not be expecting hundreds of millions of pounds on transfers as well. And then someone that kind of carries that philosophical approach, so that all the progress these guys have made, even in terms of fitness. I mean, when Brendan Rodgers was at Liverpool, the numbers were really poor for how many kilometres these guys were running. It was in the mid-table, kind of in terms of all clubs in the Premier League, how many averages these guys were running in terms of kilometres. And then they went straight to number one Liverpool. They became such a side of running, of intensity. And I think you lose a little bit of that kind of work ethic that Jurgen Klopp instilled in Liverpool if you went somewhere different. So Arne Slot, for me, from what I've seen of Feyenoord, would instill hard work, a humble approach, exciting football on the front foot, 100%. And we've seen him get to the highest levels of what he can achieve at Feyenoord. With all due respect, he's not going to be winning Champions Leagues, but getting to the kind of Conference League finals is that kind of similar step to where, you know, Jurgen Klopp was able to take Dortmund. Dortmund's capacity really was getting to a final of the Champions League, you know, winning a couple of league titles. He hit that ceiling, and then he got the move on. I think Arne Slot is in a very, very similar capacity to Jurgen Klopp in terms of where Jurgen Klopp was when he came in to Liverpool. And an overview as well. It doesn't have to go right. It doesn't have to go right. Arne Slot does not have to go right. If you get Xabi Alonso in and it doesn't go right, the pressure on him, the pressure on what he did at Bayer Leverkusen is astronomical. When Spurs got Mourinho in, it was when are we winning the league title? When are we winning the Champions League? Same with Conte. Conte had never failed to not win a trophy in his career until he went to Spurs, similar to Jose Mourinho. The pressure was huge. The pressure was insurmountable. And I think Liverpool can gamble, keep a lot of momentum, give Arne Slot a couple of £100 million to invest in some new players. I think they need an extra man in midfield. I think they need probably a new Endo in terms of, keep Endo in that side. He's 30 plus. Get someone that's like 21, 22, have some real legs, some real range. Someone like a Lavia that you're trying to get, or Caicedo for Chelsea that we're trying to get last summer. Give Arne Slot that kind of that premium signing, get the kids out of the academy. The likes of Curtis Jones as well can kick on. Trent can kick on. And I think Liverpool are in a very, very exciting position with Arne's slot at the helm. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I would really appreciate any feedback on what you think about the Arne slot situation going to Liverpool. And I'll see you very, very soon.